Hi, sir. Nice to meet you.
Hello, good morning. How are you?
I'm good. How about you, sir?
I'm fine, thank you.
Stephen Hammond has been the Conservative MP for Wimbledon since 2005. He also has a second job as an advisor to an investment company where he earns £60,000 a year. And Mr Hammond also has a third job where he earns £25,000 a year as a non-executive director of a life sciences company. Now he's keen on taking a fourth job on the International Advisory Board of the South Korean firm Hansen Consulting. You're about to watch Mr Hammond being interviewed by Soo-yeon Lee, the company's Vice President of External Affairs.
I had lunch with the South Korean ambassador last week.
Oh, last week. In London?
Yeah.
How was it?
Yeah, it was very good. We were talking a number of possible collaborations and how we might strengthen relations between the UK and Korea, which was, I think, a useful lunch for us. And so that was very helpful.
What Mr Hammond doesn't know is that Hansen Consulting doesn't actually exist. It has no clients, no money and no staff. And Soo-yeon Lee is an undercover reporter. I'm Anthony Barnett and I've been an investigative journalist for more than 20 years, and Led by Donkeys approached me to help them conduct an experiment. Would serving MPs still find time to take on another job furthering the interests of a foreign company during the cost of living crisis? We wanted to know how much time the MPs would be prepared to make available to that company and how much they'd ask to be paid. It's not against parliamentary rules for an MP to take a second job or a third or a fourth job, nor is it against the rules for them to work for a foreign company, and there are no limits on what they can earn and how much time they can spend. And maybe that's the problem. Certainly, a clear majority of the public think it's wrong for serving MPs to also work for a private company.
I was obviously in the financial markets for 20 years before I became a Member of Parliament. And during that time, I've done a lot of work on infrastructure policy. I was Minister for Transport. I sat on the Treasury Committee, and I was also Minister for Health at various times. During the last 15 years.
The first question that I have is that, as my email has mentioned, we have 6 board meetings, hopefully 5 in UK or Europe and 1 in South Korea. And we want to make sure that all candidates can make time to actually come to the board meeting in person, because we would like to have a face-to-face meeting and also invite them over to South Korea to get to know about our amazing projects and to get to know about the company in general. Is this something that you'll be available to do?
Yes, I mean, obviously the greater notice that one has of the dates, the easier it is to. But yes, I mean, there's no impediment to certainly meetings in Europe and or the meeting in Seoul if one had enough notice to do so. So I mean, that's not that wouldn't be a problem.
Okay, sounds good. I'll put a note down on your availability. Okay. And apart from that, we might request one-off meetings as well, because there might be urgent matters that need your attention in regards to any new policies upcoming or regulations that we need to know, so that we can make the right investments at the right time. Would you be able to have these one-off meetings as well?
Yeah, that's usually not a problem. I can usually schedule things in either like this or face-to-face somewhere. So again, I read your email and I noticed that was the requirement. So that wouldn't present a particular problem to me.
Okay, one-off meetings as well. What will be the best method to reach you? Would Zoom calls be enough, or?
Well, I know you said you wanted to do board meetings face-to-face. So again, if you indicated that maybe at least some of them would be in Europe, that's easy. I don't anticipate a problem, particularly with travel to Seoul once a year or more.
The chat then turns to fees.
Okay, so I would like to ask about arrangement of fees, because we want to make sure that we're paying the right level to the right person. So
yeah.
How does it work with you? Do you have a daily rate at the moment?
No, I have I have an annual agreement with the two companies that I do work with at the moment. So they pay me, we agreed a fee for the year, and they pay it like that. And then broadly, if there were any expenses, travel expenses, they pay those on the top. But broadly speaking, they then, we know what the commitment is. So like for the small non-exec director of the AIM healthcare company, it requires attending, I think, a board meeting every other month. So that's 6 board meetings a year. It requires attending the audit meeting, and a bit like you've said, several ad hoc telephone calls and meetings on Zoom where we have had to discuss, and they pay me a set fee for the year. So it's generally, I prefer, rather than a daily rate, unless you want to do a daily rate, to agree a set fee for the year on the basis that, that takes into account the 6 board meetings, and then you have me available as on an ad hoc basis as and when you do it. But I mean, it can be done other way. I have once, many years ago, had a daily rate for one company who wanted to do it that way. I'm not sure that was, it works fine, but that's the way I'm organized with the other 2 companies.
Okay. I know that it might be hard to talk about fees in general, but we want to make sure that we're paying the right amount. So, sure. Do you have we could talk about daily rates, yearly rates, but I think daily rate might be more reasonable. So do you have a set fee that you have in mind, or desired payments?
I haven't really given that too much thought at this stage because it's a very preliminary discussion. But I could certainly have a think about that and give you some thoughts over email.
Okay. I mean, just an FYI, I have suggested amount of 12 million to 20 million Korean won per day. That's about 8,000 to 15,000 pounds per day. Does that sound a bit about right?
Yeah, that sounds more, but yeah, very definitely. My rate would be, my rate probably would be towards the lower, would have been towards the lower end of it, because I'm trying to calculate it on what my rate is to these other people on a daily basis. But that would be very acceptable, something in that range.
Okay, so the range itself is quite acceptable. So, I need to write up this report to make sure that.
Sure.
So, should I just submit as top of the range, or?
Well, why don't you submit between why don't we go for somewhere sort of mid to top of the range, and we can talk about exactly what it is at that stage.
Okay, I'll just put down as 12,000 pound to 15,000 pound in between. How does that sound?
That sounds very acceptable.
I think the overall impression that this is something that you're interested in, is that right?
Yes, it is, yes.
Okay.
And I'm grateful for your time this morning.
During the entire call, Mr. Hammond never once mentioned finding time for his constituents during the cost of living crisis. We emailed him after just to check about the fee he was expecting. Mr. Hammond replied, "Thank you for meeting me this morning. The daily rates you suggested would be satisfactory, and I'm happy to proceed on that basis." In a statement, Mr. Hammond said,
"This was nothing other than what I thought to be a preliminary discussion with a South Korean company, a country that is close to my heart as I have a substantial Korean community in my constituency and which is an important ally to the UK. It turns out this company was fake, with a fake website. The remuneration amount was suggested by the actor purporting to be an employee of the company, not by me. Scamming is an unpleasant activity undertaken with malicious intent. I believe it is a great honour to be an MP. I've always put my constituents first and will always try to act in their best interests."